afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Sci Café of the series. My name is Nadia, and I will be your moderator for today. We have a pretty exciting topic in store for you today. We're going to learn all about lasers. And with me are three very diverse CAUS faculty that all use lasers in their research. So we're going to hear from them first, our panelists, and then we're going to hear from you guys in the audience. Yes, you're going to ask any question. Give our panelists a hard time. Don't be afraid and don't be shy. Remember, there are no wrong questions. So for those of you watching on Facebook Live and on YouTube, you can ask any question in the comments section. So with that, let's get started. So I guess for me, as a dark-haired person, when I think of lasers, I instantly think of laser hair removal. And perhaps as a scientist, I would think of laser pointers for presentations. But I think today we're going to hear a little bit more in-depth and sophisticated ways of using lasers in research. So with that, Boon, if you don't mind, I'm going to hand it over to you. Don't forget to introduce yourself. And let us know how you use lasers as a tool in your research to answer any of those kind of grand challenges that you might have and what they are.
Thanks, Nadia. My name is Boon. I'm from electrical engineering. Nadia have just mentioned that laser is used laser pointer. This we know that is laser pointer. In this case, it's a bit bluish color that we use it to point. And the power here is about 20 milliwatt of power, optical power that we're talking about, very, very low. And in my lab, we make semiconductor laser of such that you're using in this particular laser pointer that is about the same size of your hair diameter. But we use it in generating white color light for lighting. And for this one, this is the white light that's being generated by 1.5 watt optical laser. So that is equivalent to about 40 watt of your incandescent light bulb. So the power that we're using in total is just about 3 watt or so. It means that we'll be able to save up to 80% of the energy by using laser to generate white color light. Even compared to LED, you see this LED light bulb that we are more efficient than LED light bulb by easily 30–40%. Another applications that we explore in the lab is by using semiconductor laser, that tiny little device to generate very, very fast internet access. In this room, maybe you'll be able to access to a Wi-Fi data up to about 10 megabit per second, to be precise, 12.7 megabit per second. And the technique that we generate by using the light bulb that we are making using laser light bulbs, you'll be able to access to internet at the speed of maybe 1,000 times more than what we are having right now in Wi-Fi.
Fantastic. 1,000 times faster internet. Yeah, sign me up for that. Amir, maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you use lasers in your research as a tool and to answer any grand challenges that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. So I'm Amir Farooq. I'm a faculty in mechanical engineering. So let me start off by saying that nature has given us 5 great ways, our senses, to sense and interact the world around us, the beautiful world around us. That's touch, taste, smell, hearing, and vision. But of course, there are certain things that we cannot see or sense with our naked eyes. How about the molecules in this room? How about the air that we are breathing in? What is contained in this air? Anyone? Oxygen, nitrogen. Of course, we need oxygen. But what else is contained in this air? Are there any pollutants? Is it safe for us to use, or is it safe for us to breathe or not? That's where we can use lasers to become our eyes. Laser can become our vision into the unseen world of atoms and molecules. We can use them and design sensors to detect molecules and atoms in a complex chemical environment. So in a very simple way, let me describe that. So we have here a semiconductor laser. This specific one is called a quantum cascade laser because it emits radiation in the mid-infrared region with a specific technology. So I can make this laser radiation come out of this laser and then detect it on a photodetector. And the interaction of the photons coming out of this laser with the molecules in this air, and by specifically choosing the correct wavelength or a resonant wavelength with the target molecule that I'm trying to measure, and then looking at the signal, the electrical signal that comes out of this photodetector, we can answer many important questions. For example, is there carbon monoxide in this room, which could be quite poisonous and bad for us? If yes, what is the concentration of carbon monoxide? Likewise, by choosing a different wavelength of this laser, we can look for other molecules, we can look for other pollutants. So the fundamental process that works here is the process of called absorption spectroscopy. So the electromagnetic radiation interacts with the energy levels of the molecules, and the photons are absorbed by the molecules, and the decrease in the laser intensity is linked by spectroscopic parameters to precisely calculate how much of a specific species or molecules may be there. A much more complex chemical environment is that of combustion, a fuel combustion happening inside a car engine, or maybe happening in a gas turbine or in a turbine in an airplane. There, in the process of converting the chemical energy of the fuel to thermal energy and then using it to drive or fly, many species and molecules are being formed as the fuel is undergoing the oxidation and combustion process. Again, that's where we can use lasers, carefully designed sensors to detect how the fuel is being converted, what intermediate species are being formed, how much of a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide or methane is formed, or other pollutants. And so such laser-based sensors allow us to unravel the underlying chemistry of fuel oxidation process. And then eventually it helps us to answer very clearly questions such as, is this fuel better in terms of its efficiency, or this engine is better or not, and which one of this is less polluting or better for our environment?
Thank you, Amir. Carlo, I'm going to ask you the same question. Maybe introduce yourself first and let us know how you use lasers as a tool in your research.
Thanks, Nadia. My name is Carlo Liberale. I'm faculty in bioscience, and we use laser mainly to interact with microscopic objects. And in doing this, we do this in different ways, mainly two different ways. And this is allowed by the fact by tuning specific properties of the laser, like the wavelength and the power, you can generate different effects on the matter. So in one side of our activity, we use laser for microscopy, which means that we exploit the property of laser to be focused to very small areas, much smaller than what you can do with a magnifying lens on normal light. And this area is much smaller than a cell, human cell. So by scanning this focused laser light inside a cell, you can get information on biomolecule within the cell. So we use this to basically to provide new eyes to biologists and physicians to understand how biomolecules distribute within the cell in healthy and diseased cells. So on the other side, by changing some parameter of the laser, we instead induce some effect in the material. In particular, we work with a kind of high resolution 3D printer, which is much higher in resolution than what you can find as commercially available. And with these devices, basically, and with this system, we can print micro-optics, which are so thin that can be printed basically on the tip of an hair. So we actually print them on the tip of optical fiber, but you probably know an optical fiber is a very thin object, can be as thin as a human hair. And the idea is to miniaturize optical system, and this is toward different goals. One may be just to reduce the invasiveness of some biomedical tools like endoscopes, or also towards other applications like sensor or optical communication, which also look for miniaturization to reduce the space and the weight of this system towards different applications.
Fantastic. Okay, so we really do have three very diverse researchers here that use lasers as a tool. And kind of just to recap, Boon, you're going to get us 80% more energy, 1,000 times faster internet. Amir is looking at using lasers, looking at a very molecular level, how molecules interact, and with the potential of monitoring air pollution. And Carlo is using lasers at the very microscopic level and also to create systems. So I am going to open up to you guys in the audience for questions very soon, but I think I have one question first, almost a follow-on from this. Carlo, I'm going to hand it over to you first. What is the potential impact, of your research using these lasers?
So when reflected to two different areas of our research, I would say that for microscopy, the big impact is, as I say, to provide new eye to biologists, because we try to expand the available technique and the available level of sensitivity to the system. In particular, we are looking to molecules which recently biologists are now considering as even more important, playing a more important role on different situations like diseases, like cancer or other kind of diseases. In particular, these are lipids, so the fatty acid molecules. And we are especially sensitive with our method to this. And we look forward to generate systems that can be used also on the clinical side, because there are still quite a lot on the development side at the moment. But we are confident they will provide a very valuable tool for biologists and clinicians to have new information on how biological system works, and also for clinicians to provide a better diagnosis on disease patients. And on the other side, with the high-resolution 3D printing, the idea is to be able to create miniaturize the system which can basically shift completely, be a breakthrough on a system like microendoscopes, to be able to perform exam where was not possible so far because of the invasiveness, like in brain or other part of the body. So again, the idea is to provide a next level to biologists and clinicians to do their investigation. So we work very closely with them in our application.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Amir, do you mind if I give you the same question?
Sure. So we hear these days a lot about global warming. It is, if not the biggest, maybe one of the biggest challenges that we are facing as humanity. And although it is extremely important that we look for alternative and renewable technologies, I think it's quite understandable that we need to also work on optimizing the existing technologies and the existing infrastructure that we have in place and make them used in an environmentally friendly fashion. So in that context, we at the Clean Combustion Research Center have been working very collaboratively over the last few years with Saudi Aramco to optimize fuels and engines. We have looked at a number of new engine concepts, engine designs, but more importantly, or what I want to highlight, is that we have investigated a number of different fuels working with Saudi Aramco, all the way from conventional fuels, gasoline and diesel, to the fuels of the future, like naphtha, ethanol, methanol, and other kinds of biofuels. And in this research, the laser-based sensors that I described earlier have been extremely vital for us to understand and differentiate these different kind of fuels, their impact when they're used in the engine, what is the differences in their chemistry, what is their impact on CO2 and other greenhouse gas formation, pollutant formation. And so by this, we can come up with a predictive capability of optimizing the fuels and engines. And this has allowed us to propose future low-carbon alternatives for transportation and other energy technologies. Actually recently comes to my mind from low carbon is that recently we've been investigating ammonia, NH3, as not a low carbon, but a zero carbon future fuel. So that would be fantastic if we can use ammonia as a fuel for transportation or other energy technologies where this will emit no carbon. One of the challenges with ammonia is that it can emit large amounts of NOx, which is a pollutant. And so that's the concern. Again, in this research, we are utilizing laser-based sensors to detect NOx formation in ammonia use, and also to come up with strategies so that we can minimize the NOx formation. I'll give a second example of impact, and kind of taking on from what Carlo was talking about clinical applications. So I want to pose kind of a question. Let's say if you are feeling unwell or feeling a bit sick, wouldn't it be nice to get diagnosed without making a trip to the hospital? Or if you end up going to the hospital, wouldn't it be nice to not getting pricked with a needle and get your blood sucked for analysis? I'm sure the kids never like that when they're asked to give a blood sample. So yes, it could be possible. There are solutions being looked at that. And one of the solutions that we are pursuing is again based on laser technology. So the idea is that when I breathe out, like all of us are doing right now, our breath contains a large number of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and other molecules. And these VOCs are indicative of our physiological condition, different specific metabolic processes that are happening. And if you can link a specific molecule to a specific condition or organ, then we call it a biomarker. So by designing by designing laser-based sensors, which we have done for a specific biomarker, then you can come up with a non-invasive, fully non-invasive way of diagnosing a condition, but also monitoring it over time. So at Cows, we have had a startup company on this called BioBreath, where we have looked at some biomarkers. And this can have very wide applications, from point of care, ease of diagnosis, to also maybe screening large populations. All you would need is a breath sample, and then you can screen large populations, for example, in Africa or in Saudi Arabia, when we have large amount of people coming for pilgrim at the Hajj season. And then finally, quickly, I'll just mention that we are working with the Environmental Protection Department of Saudi Aramco to develop sensors for leak detection and air pollution monitoring. One of these sensors is for benzene, which is a very important feedstock and a commodity in petrochemical industries and refineries, but it's a very harmful pollutant. So we are designing sensors which can detect the tiniest leak of benzene from these processing facilities. And so this kind of research can have great impact. Likewise, we've been asked to design new sensors for methane. And methane is important because natural gas is going to get a lot more usage in future, but it's a good fuel because it has low carbon, low C2H ratio, but its global warming potential, methane's global warming potential compared to carbon dioxide is at least 28 to 36 times more on a 100-year GWP. So it's very important that as we increase our usage of natural gas and methane, we need to have detection methodologies and sensors based on some of the technologies that we work so that we can reduce that impact.
Thank you. Very well explained. Boon, do you want to take a shot? Same question.
Yeah, sure. Laser sometimes being called as a solution looking for problem. So it's not problem looking for solutions, because we provide the solutions. You just need to come up with the problem, like what my colleague has been just described, vast application. Impact that my labs has brought in the past couple of years, we try to align our technology, laser technology, towards energy. That is the energy saving part that we just talked about, and communications. Other than that, we also work on using semiconductor laser to work as sensor. We make optical probe, for example, for underwater communications. Currently, we know that in underwater probe, if you want to study the environment, etc., coral reef included, and the subsea survey and all that, you have the acoustic probe. Acoustic probe is very, very slow, and acoustic probe also will affect a lot of sea animal, because essentially you send a sound wave for the communication and for detections. In our case, we use light wave. Light wave be able to generate a few tens of thousand times faster speed than what people has been doing in acoustic wave. That is environmental. The other one is impacting on food. We make distributed sensor to send for any diseases, for example. There's a bird called red palm fever, especially in this country. In Saudi Arabia, we have about 30 million palm trees. The population here is about 36 million, but we have 30 million palm trees. So 30 million palm trees, starting in 2011 or so, we begin to have this red palm fever attacking the palm tree. It's not visible, but when they are biting to the core of the palm, be able to generate some specific frequency. And we use a very, very long sensor, 10 kilometers of very, very low-cost optical fiber. Again, it's not any bigger than your hair diameter to detect those sensors. So one sensor be able to go for up to 1,000 trees or so for detections. And we can detect it in a very, very early day. For the conventional way of detecting those birds is to send somebody to drill a hole, insert a microphone, stand there to hear about the feeding noise for an hour or so before we move on to the next tree. But now we have 24/7 monitoring and early detection solution because of semiconductor laser. Another things that we use semiconductor laser for is to grow plant. We know about artificial lighting. We use LED to grow plant indoor and the so-called vertical horticulture. But in our case, we use laser because plant only need to generate food from two different wavelengths of the energy, blue and red color. So we just provide enough of such color by using semiconductor laser, which can be guided to the chamber to grow those plants. And actually, there's a company from the student, Oasis, that's being established because of that particular technology. in the past, we also talk about, we also developed a specific device, semiconductor device, for ophthalmologist applications. When eye doctor wanted to examine your retina, for example, they are not going to dig out your eye, cut into half, look at the retina, and put together, put it back. They are going to send a light. That light is near infrared light that's not even visible to your eye, so we can keep your eye remain open and get the 3D mapping of the retina by sending in the light. The technology is called optical coherent tomography. It's a technology developed by James Fujimoto, MIT. Kauzai Meditech, that's a German company, and the US, they're manufacturing in the US, Kauzai, are manufacturing those. And the technology is from MIT, and the light source that is making those imaging is actually developed by us. So those are impacting a couple of the energy side, environment, water, and food that we have been doing. Oh, I mentioned about water. Water, Xiaohang Li and I, we work on the UV, ultraviolet, LED, and laser. That is for water purification, because any of those bacteria and any small molecule will be destroyed by UV light, especially UVC.
Thank you, Boon. Wow, many uses of lasers. So medical diagnostics, growing plants, underwater communications, potential environmental monitoring, and also not going to the doctor and just getting your breath detected. Love that. So now it's up to you guys in the audience. We're opening up to you. If you have any questions, please, let's give these panelists a bit of a hard time. Remember, there is no wrong question. Yes, here. Okay. I'm going to get you a microphone first. Okay, I'm not a baller, but I'm going to try to throw this. Thank you.
Hi, Boon. I have a quick question for you. So it's really impressive how much more light you can generate with such, starting to get some reverb here, with so little energy. Clearly amazing implications. What's the limitation now to getting that into the market? I mean, we should all have flashlights for emergencies that require almost no battery, and you know, what's the limitation there?
Excellent question. Until today, the price is still a concern because LED, now we can have very low LED light bulb. But for laser light bulb, it's still quite costly, maybe 10 times more than the LED light bulb, although the lifetime is the same, but the cost is still quite high. If you compare, historically, laser is quite expensive, but now laser is worth, for certain wavelength laser, red color, for example, it's worth a few cents per piece. For example, this one, maybe it's just worth a few cents. That's why I can use it in a laser pointer, etc. So we hope that one day, once it's developed enough, the price will come down to a decent cost, and in that case, it will happen because it's definitely way more energy saving than LED.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah, we've got one over there. You can just throw it. Yeah, it's not going to hurt anybody.
Yes, thank you. My question is like, where do you see like an area for improvement and more research development? Especially we are talking about now industrial revolution for IR4, for laser application for a smart city or a smart sensor. And also if you can like please give us more application for your current research activity, especially for oil and gas application, as I'm coming from background.
Yeah. Okay, want me to take it?
Yeah, take away.
Okay. I think sensing is a big part of our future smart cities, as you mentioned, right? And there are a huge variety of sensors that are being developed and looked at. We have a number of other colleagues at KAUST who are developing sensors for different applications, including our future smart city at NEOM. We have had a very impressive initiative by the Office of Sponsored Research called the Sensor Initiative, and really great work has come out of that. So a variety of sensors are going to become widespread. They are going to become less and less costly so that they can be applied widespread. An example, just taking on from smart cities, is the autonomous driving, right? The autonomous driving is also built upon a number of sensors, and one of the key sensors in autonomous cars is a LiDAR, right? So the use of laser for detection and for ranging, right? So that's what allows the car to sense its environment and then move forward. In terms of specifically to oil and gas, as I mentioned that we've been working with Saudi Aramco and specifically their environmental protection department to come up with more portable laser-based sensors which can be used either deployed at various locations, looking for leaks, looking for other issues, or in some cases they can be flown around with a small drone. Maybe not the right word to use these days, but so that's in that sense the laser-based sensors, because of their specific advantages in terms of selectivity, sensitivity, and they can be used to survey a number of different molecules and species. They can help us achieve higher efficiencies and lower emissions, whether it's at petrochemical places or whether it's optimizing our transportation systems or not.
Boon, you wanna add something?
Right. Since you mentioned about the Orion Gas, we do have a project that we call it as quite a successful project with Ramco. Is the dispute sensor again. When you have a well, you drill down for say a few kilometers, and then laterally you just have to go into about up to a few tens of kilometers or so. So in every single production's well, you have a optical fiber. So the well is about 6 to 8 inch diameter, which is quite difficult to really detect what happened to the flow and to the production's well. And the current technology that Aramco is using is very much from a service provider. And they call it as distributed acoustic sensor, again, to hear sound and to measure temperature. The distributed temperature means every single meter or so, I need to find what is happening in that particular meter to the entire 10 kilometers of distributions. Very high cost, $300,000 rental per year. Data doesn't belong to Aramco, as you know. In our case, we built the entire box using completely different technology and integrating the acoustic and temperature sensing, distributed sensing, throughout the entire fiber for them. And the entire box is $20,000. And you guys are commercializing it. So that is the box that we built. And that is based on simple laser technology. Another one that we have been working on in LiDAR, Amir has just mentioned. Car headlamp. If you're rich enough to buy an RX or, I'm poor. So i8 or RX, that's BMW or Audi. Car headlamp, you can choose to use a laser car headlamp starting 2013, I guess. And essentially, it's using technology that's about similar to what we are doing in this particular flashlight. Why by using laser? Laser basically be able to have a longer throw. When talk about throw, see how far can we see. By using our conventional car headlamp, we only can see very, very short distance, maybe 100 meters, 150 the most. LED be able to focus most of the beam, be able to have a throw up to the maximum 250 to 300 meters. How far is the laser throw? 1 kilometer. So it means that if I will be able to develop a LiDAR system, LiDAR essentially just have the time of flight, have a photon standing from that particular point, there's a pulse, and then get the reflectant photon bouncing back. 1 kilometer, we know the speed of light, and that will give us 3.33 micron delay. And that, being able to image it, we get the distance, we get the image. So in the lab, we are currently looking into how to generate very, very long distance LiDAR. Tesla, for example, we have level 2 to level 3 autonomous, right? That essentially is limited by the LiDAR system that they are using. They are very clever. They use a CCD camera to capture the image using programming to process the image to understand the light, to retrieve the LiDAR system. But the limitation also that you only can see quite short a distance. You will not be able to see beyond 100 meters. That is quite dangerous. That will limit the car to below 40 miles an hour. The autonomous vehicle that we're going to introduce to cars, that will only get us to about 40 kilometers, not even 40 miles per hour. That's because you cannot quite see far. You cannot have those autonomous. If the LiDAR system that being able to generate by the laser system that we are developing and integrating into the car headlamp, those things will be possible. Another thing is limitations. Autonomous, if you have full autonomous, let's say go up to level 5, bandwidth is quite important. When we're talking about bandwidth, is how fast can we process the signal. Entire level 5 autonomous, there's no one having this autonomous level 5 unless you move at, say, 1 meter per minute or so. So that is very slow, right? Nobody would like that. So if you want to have it to a decent speed, being able to have full autonomous in the highway, the minimum bandwidth that you need to is at least 100 megabit per second. What does it mean by 100 megabit per second? Means that our current 4G system will not be able to support it. And even 5G will be able to hit onto it, but there's no 5G system yet. So being able to integrate all those lighting communication system on the lamppost, for example, on the vehicle, for example, being able to communicate with the infrastructure, communicate with the vehicle, and communicate with the surrounding and etc. That will make this particular technology happen.
Just to latch on to that,
Yeah.
You mentioned about the oil wells. So in the on the upstream side of things, one of the important processes is oil-water separation during the extraction process. So we've been recently conversing with the XPEC ARC Research Center at Saudi Aramco that the current sensors that they use to detect water in oil or to make sure that the separation is happening well, they're facing certain problems with them. They require calibration over and over and some other issues. So we are now in collaboration working with them to see how we can propose a more versatile, calibration-free, laser-based sensor to look at the separation of water and oil. That's another example.
Brilliant. Okay, any more questions? Yeah, we have one over here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Noah from the CCRC, Clean Combustion. In the spirit of giving the panelists a little bit of a hard time, I'd like to ask what are some of the disadvantages or quote-unquote, bad things that laser technology has introduced?
You want to take on?
Yeah, I can just start saying, okay, one of the problem is related to one of the devices we just mentioned, for instance, the LiDAR. So one big concern is for people around, when you scan the environment in front of the car, you don't want to create problem to the eyes of people. So a lot of research now, and not yet at the conclusive stage to understand.
If that happens, then you'll be using this. All of us will have to be wearing like this.
Looks so
not-
cool.
So that's okay. Go ahead.
Yes. No, so the problem is really to understand what parameters of the laser are good to have enough depth of identification of objects in the field around you, but not to create damage on people. So this is still an application where there is a space for a problem, issue to be solved yet. So this is I would not say it's a negative side of laser, because lasers are unique on this toward this application, but for sure, because of their power, they can also create damage issue to them. So this is one of, yeah.
I mean, another is that with every technology, it has its goods and bads. So lasers can also be used in military applications and are used, right? Now you can decide for yourself which direction is that. But one drawback, you also kind of said drawback is, which actually Boon mentioned earlier, is the cost. So the laser-based technologies tend to be expensive, and even for some of the laser-based sensors that we develop, the costs, although we have advantages in terms of performance, but the cost is a challenge. So this laser that I was showing earlier, it's a semiconductor laser. It's a small, inside the laser chip is pretty small. This is just the packaging. So because it's a fairly new technology, this small thing used to cost $30,000, right? But over the last few years, it has come down to $10,000, but it still is very expensive. Oh, my $10,000, okay. It still is expensive, right? So that's a drawback. But with time, we are quite hopeful that as the technology improves, the costs will come down and we'll see widespread use.
With your research, the cost will come down.
Yes.
Yeah. Boon, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, only one. Give me 1 minute. Well, of course, nothing is perfect. Everything has pro and con, and this is why we work on semiconductor laser. Laser that you're using in combustion is maybe very, very big laser that consumes a lot of power. But what we are doing is trying to create a semiconductor laser that is about the same size of your hair diameter, that be able to cover all the wavelength and all the power. So that is what we are hoping for. Commenting on the laser safety, we have laser safety experts sitting here, so make sure that I say it correctly. It depends on wavelength as well. We do have eye-safe wavelength. For example, 1.5 to all the way to about 2 something micron. Those are eye-safe. Those are we use it for optical communications in optical fiber that you pull from Europe to Saudi, for example, that allow us to access to 100 megabit per second, right? Those are eye safe means that there's no limits, but certain wavelength that being able to absorb by eye, for example, be able to ionize air if it is too high a power, for example, those are dangerous. So whenever we're dealing with laser, we always have to have enough protection gear.
Okay, yeah, we have another question over there.
Hi. Do we have lasers that with the same machine you can produce different kind of wavelengths? And because as a materials engineer, for example, we go to do a Raman, and then if you don't have a certain wavelength, then you then look for another wavelength. And can we have machines where different wavelengths can be produced by the same machine?
So maybe I think it's a very active area of research as well, developing what you would call widely tunable lasers. So historically, yes, you would get a laser, for example, a 1064 nanometer laser. So that's a very common ND-YAG laser. And then you get its harmonics at 532 nanometer and 266 nanometer. Then you have excimer lasers, very high power lasers, very important for lithography applications. But now there has been a lot of development in recent years where you can get a laser which is widely tunable. I just got some funding again from our office to get a new laser system that we will be able to tune from 1400 nanometers or 1.4 micron all the way to 4 micron. So that one laser with a very high power and very narrow line width, which is important for our spectroscopic applications, can be used to tune a wide wavelength range. Likewise, there have been developing happening in the mid-infrared range as well to develop lasers which give you wider access, and so then you don't have to swap them around all the time.
Raman laser, you're talking about 740, that's covered by semiconductor. But that actually a lot of things is driven by market. We do have the technology to have tunable laser. In optical telecom, for example, we now can integrate everything into not more than, say, a millimeter length, and still less than the hair diameter of dimensions to give you a very, very large tunability to cover what we call as C-band and L-band, which is starting from 1500 go all the way to about 1620 or so nanometers. So that is possible. But again, those are expensive stuff. In the lab, we always call this as we use car to describe our device, and tunable laser of such, we always call it as a Series 5 BMW because it's 50-something thousand. And then it's about Series 3 BMW, then it's about 30-something thousand equipment. So those are the price range that Amir has been talking about. So in optical telecom, yes, we have a lot of technology. In the shorter wavelength, falling into the Raman vibrational modes, etc., that again is too small a market, there's no interest. And of course, we'll be able to go for various different technology that is already available and know physics to how to tune the wavelength. But broadly tuned, say, from the UV go all the way to mid-infrareds that Amir has been using, no such thing. You still have to use different types of laser that integrate them together to give you broad tunability.
Okay, we have a question right at the back down there.
There at the back.
Hi, professors. Thank you for this talk. So I'm a material scientist, so I'm interested in the materials aspect of this. You talked about semiconductor lasers and the first generation gallium nitride-based lasers, like the conventional lasers, and then we have the second generation perovskite-based lasers where we can produce like the green and red emission directly. I know the gallium nitride issues with the blue. And then my question is, well, how do you see like with all these like papers and zillion papers published in perovskites and like amplified like light and lasers, how do you think that's, is it really going to the market? And what do you see the future in terms of materials for lasers? What should we expect, or how do you think like material scientists should focus on?
I'm sorry if I'm loud because I work on perovskite. Well, in laser, we know that anything that you pump hard enough, it will glow and lace eventually if you lock onto the cavity, right? So I always enjoy telling this story. And after the inventions of ruby laser in 1960, it now award to 3 gentlemen who get the Nobel Prize, and another theorist in Stanford, Professor Carlo, has been thinking about getting his own, because he didn't get the Nobel Prize, so he's been thinking about getting his own Nobel Prize by working on the so-called color laser. So the color laser that he has this idea, which is very unique, is already demonstrated, but he successfully demonstrated, although he still missed the Nobel Prize, which is the dye laser. Dye laser means that you get the gelatin, jello, or jelly, put some organic dye, pump it hard enough to get it to lace in yellow color, for example. That is the things. So come back to your question about perovskite laser and whether it's time for commercialization. Answer, at least at this point, although we have other viewer, right? No. Simply, it's too unstable and too immature to get to this point yet. And still a lot of research needed in order to get the perovskite to even lace. Because it is too soft material, and it's not too, the stability is still not quite there yet. So still a lot of research need to be done. Hopefully you'll be able to make it stable, and hopefully be able to make it lace. In that case, you'll be able to get the material to cover the entire spectrum, the visible spectrum, from 400 go all the way to about red color of 680 or so, which is wonderful.
How do you see the future of what kind of materials should we focus on for lasers?
Again, anything that you pump hard enough, it will glow and lace eventually. So you just look into any missing wavelength. The missing wavelength right now is, in semiconductor point of view, the yellow, orange color, and the bright, high brightness red, which cover from a wavelength of about 550, which is the true green. That's very sensitive to our eye, 550 nanometers, the very, very bright green, to yellow color, which is about 580 to 590 to 600 or so, and then 620, which is the very, very bright red color. You'll be able to cover this range and develop semiconductor laser or miniaturize the semiconductor, any type of material to make this happen. Then you are going to be a very, very famous scientist.
If I add my wish list to that, so one of the wavelengths which is extremely vital to sense benzene, as I was talking about earlier, is 14.82 micron in the mid-infrared. And currently, there is no such laser that I can purchase and make a measurement there. So what we are doing now is we are combining a CO2 gas laser and another low wavelength quantum cascade laser and doing a non-linear optical process of OPO to generate that 14.82 micron. And that setup is like this big, gigantic, right? So not suitable for a field application. So if there could be a material to generate wavelengths at that region, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, we're going to, Carlo, do you have something you want to add,
just
please?
I can add, also connected to the first question about what are the topics of interest for new progresses on lasers.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, lasers have been developed for some application, and then after years, people have used for other applications, have found them very useful for other applications. So in general, the development of new laser, like new technology employing nonlinear optics or whatever, is also exciting, I think, at the fundamental level. So even though you don't have a specific application in your mind, but just developing, bringing up the performances of laser, sooner or later will end up in some application of interest. This has been shown all the time in the previous years.
Excellent point.
Okay, so the future is bright for lasers. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we'll hold off on any questions, and I think we should thank our panelists here for giving us their time, and thank you in the audience as well for listening. So big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.